Hi, everyone. This is Michael Horn. And what you're about to listen to on Class Disrupted is the conversation Diane and I had with Rebecca Winthrop. Rebecca is the author of a terrific new book, The Disengaged Teen. She is the head of the Center for Universal Education at the Brookings Institution, and she has helped stand up a global task force there on AI and education, which forms the basis for our conversation today. Rebecca brings forward a couple interesting perspectives that I want to highlight here. Number one, the importance of doing a pre-mortem on the impact of AI in education. And as she said, a pre-mortem doesn't focus on the optimistic case for AI. It fast forwards the story to say, knowing what we know now, let's get ahead of this and imagine the negative impacts from AI and then guard against that. Second, in her mind, the big pre-mortem risks to worry about are three things. Number one, we can offload cognitive tasks to AI. But as she said, the child development people don't know what kids have to do on their own and what actually can be offloaded to AI without harmful consequences. Second, she worries about manipulation. And third, she worries about the impact to socialization from AI. One thing I'm leaving this conversation with is whether Rebecca's hope, I guess I would say, that AI can be this thing that spurs us to have this national dialogue around the purpose of education so that we can really rethink what schooling looks like. Is that the way that this happens? Is it such a big shock that we'll all come together and have these conversations? Or is it more likely that the real action around system reinvention or system transformation will occur from the grassroots? That is, as in individual communities, education entrepreneurs create new forms or systems of schooling that gain traction over time as more and more people migrate to them. And we are left with a series of different systems that have a series of different purposes to them. That's the question that I'll leave thinking more about from this episode that you're about to hear. I hope you enjoy. Hey, Diane, it is good to see you in a school as well. That is probably pretty energizing. And I will say on this show, the hits keep on rolling. I'm loving all that our guests who have such different perspectives on the vantage point and the question around AI and education are bringing. And I am very certain today will be no different.
I couldn't agree more, Michael. And as those interviews start to become public, we are now hearing from our listeners, which we love. And honestly, it's one of the best parts of doing this podcast, besides getting to have really fun conversations with you and
I'm
geeking out,
okay
of course. That's my
I'm okay taking a backseat to the listeners, but okay.
but I hope we keep hearing more questions and suggestions, especially at this time in the season when we start to think about what's next. But before I get too far ahead of myself, we have a real treat here today, I think.
We do indeed. We have my friend Rebecca Winthrop on the show, and Rebecca is a senior fellow and director of the Center for Universal Education at the Brookings Institution. Her research focuses on education globally. That's how I got to know her most deeply. She pays a lot of attention to the skills that young people need to thrive in work, life, and as constructive citizens. So really big, weighty questions. She's also the co-author with Jenny Anderson of a very highly acclaimed new book, The Disengaged Teen, helping kids learn better, feel better, and live better. Definitely check it out. It's obviously sort of a zeitgeist at this moment, sadly. And the book does a great job, I think, tackling it, helping people put in perspective and sort of think about where do I want my kid on these different journeys as they're learning. And it's not necessarily what you think the answer might be for those listening. So definitely check it out. For our purposes in this conversation, I will say not only does the book talk a lot about the themes that we talk a lot about on this podcast, but Rebecca is also spearheading the Brookings Global Task Force on AI and Education. And we will link to that and the book in the show notes. But suffice to say, she's been thinking a lot about the questions we're most interested in, Diane. And I feel lucky we get to record with her because Rebecca has been like getting to hang out with like people like Drew Barrymore. And I think Hoda was at one of your book events, Rebecca. So you are rolling. The book has definitely hit a nerve. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to see you.
Oh, it's a total pleasure to be here. It's a
Well,
treat for me too.
well, you can lie if you say that, but given
It's
all
not a
the
lie. It's an honest
given
to
all the
goodness.
folks you're getting to hang out with. But before we get into the approach of your thinking around AI and education and some of the questions that you're asking, I would love to hear how and why you got interested in this topic in the first place, and how you've gone about learning about AI in general and AI in education
Hmm.
specifically.
Maybe in reverse order, how I've gone about learning about it. I mean, I think all of us, I would assume all of us, it's certainly, maybe I shouldn't make this assumption, are out trying stuff in our own lives. So I've gone about it, when something new hits, I just want to check it out. So I'm now a steady user of GPT-4, pay my little subscription, and it is so much better. And I've tried the dollies and the this and the that, like PowerPoints, make an illustration, do this. What can it do? Like, what can it do? Just just because you get a little, it's experiential learning, right? Like, you get a little bit more of a sense of its power and its limitations. Well, maybe that's just how I learn, than just reading the text. So in terms of going about learning about it, the first thing I've done is just been playing around with it. And I'm no expert by any means, but it certainly has helped me wrap my head around the massive seismic shift that generative AI is. I think that's the thing that most, and this gets to the first part of your question, that I was most almost emotionally struck by, was how crazy it is to be able to interact with a machine in my own words. Before, we had to learn a different language. We had to learn code to interact and and make machines do things. And now it's in my our own language. And that right there to me is a huge fundamental shift that we need to take incredibly seriously. And so then from there, I started getting really interested in it, because who can not be interested in it if you're in education, and everyone's talking about it. But also, I started being really worried. I was initially very worried about it because I'd just come out of all this book research. Jenny and I had been doing for the disengaged teen. And the big highlight message there is kids are so deeply disengaged in school. And Diane, this has been your life's work to find a new way of doing school that they're not disengaged. So this is no new. And Michael, you have been on the forefront of how to use tech well for a long, long time. So I've been learning from you for years. Um, so it's not news to both of you, but this book is a sort of broad audience book, and we found there's four modes of engagement that kids show up. They show up as passenger mode, most kids. We partnered with Transcend, 50% of kids. That's kind of their experience in middle school and high school. Achiever mode, they're like trying to be perfect at everything that's put in front of them, and end up actually being very fragile learners. Resistor mode, these are the quote unquote, problem kids. That's who we think is disengaged, we broadly society. Um, and they're avoiding and disrupting, but they have a lot of agency, a lot of gumption. And if you can switch their context, they can get into explore mode. And the thing that I thought about, GPT-3 launched in mid sort of, right. We were sort of towards the end of writing the book. And I was so worried that it would massively scale how many kids were in passenger mode if we didn't do it right, if we didn't figure it out. And so that's why lots and lots of people are doing incredibly good work in different pockets around the globe. And anyways, that's why we launched our Brookings Global Task Force on AI and education, to try to bring those questions together and bring a slightly different methodology.
Rebecca, that sort of leads into the first place I'd love for us to go, which is, one of the ways that you approach this work is through pre-mortems. And for, people who don't know what a pre-mortem is, oftentimes we do post-mortems after something to, dissect what went wrong and what went right and whatnot. But the pre-mortem is when you try to think about that before you're even in it to really, visualize and imagine the potential negative impacts that could materialize so we can do something about it before we get there. It's conceptually a more empowering way of thinking about things. And so, you know, I'd love to unpack your sort of pre-mortem thinking about this, and we're going to start with the positive. So, um, let talk us through, if you will, the positive case for AI in education. As you've done this sort of pre-mortem forward thinking, what are you excited about? What's
Right,
the possibility?
right.
Um, yeah.
Well, Diane, I'll get there on the positives, but I want to talk a little bit about the pre-mortem piece because what you just did is exactly what everyone in education has done when we started this pre-mortem exercise, because the pre-mortem is you do not start with the positive. And so which actually has been a problem. The people in education, our people, all of us in our community, are sunny optimists. We believe in the potential of human development. And every time we finally had to switch it up, like every time we did the proper pre-mortem, there's a whole science behind pre-mortem thinking and starting with the risks. And people like rebelled. They didn't like it. They felt uncomfortable. So, anyways, that's an interesting observation. So, but the idea of the pre-mortem came out of sort of discussions we've been having internally. We've had actually, it came out let's see, almost a year ago, February. Last February, we had a great meeting with our leadership council. We have a leadership council at our center, and HP hosted us. We were in the Hewlett garage, and it was amazing. And then we did a broader conference, and we were just around the table trying to figure out how to wrap our hands around how different Gen AI is and what it means for education, and knowing that there's incredible conversations happening in a range of other pockets. And one of the things that I believe strongly in is that we should always look broadly across our set, not just a solution set can come from anywhere. And so, even outside of our sector, from the health sector, in this case, from cybersecurity. So this is a typical thing done in other sectors, cybersecurity being one. And we can't. Your listeners might know, but we can't find a single instance where it's done in education. And I actually think we should do it for every tech product before we roll it out. And it basically is, um, let's figure out how it could all go wrong and then put that all on paper and then figure out how to mitigate those so it doesn't all go wrong. And we should have done this with social media 10 years ago. If we'd had child development folks, educators, teachers, therapists, counselors sitting around the table designing social media with developers, I am sure we could have avoided at least 70% of the harms. Now, would companies have gone along with it? That's a different, question. Let's parenthesize that. But like we, it's not. These are things that you can, if you go through a very systematic thought process, and we have an incredible Mary Burns is an incredible colleague working with us, leading this, where you literally, it's a very sort of systematic process to think about the risks. So
Yeah.
you want to speed up and go straight to the
Well,
benefits.
let's flip it. We don't have to follow that. Like, let's flip it. And so let's start with that. Like, I mean, the worst case scenario of a pre-mortem is the patient dies, right? And so, like,
Right.
what's the
Yeah,
equivalent of
exactly.
the patient dying of
Right.
AI in education?
Yeah.
Make that case for us, and
Yeah.
let's do it in that order. Yeah.
the premortem is like moving the autopsy forward, and like how
Right.
how could they die? So I want to caveat this, and you guys have thought about this deeply, so please chime in with your own versions, that we are in the midst of the premortem research on the risks side, which includes lots of focus groups with educators, with kids, with ed leaders, our steering group members, etc. Um, so a few of the things, so this is going to be the Rebecca version. This is not the entire task force. Um, a few of the things on the risks that give me pause are talking to, and we have, a number of colleagues on our team who are learning scientists, neuroscientists, and then talking to other colleagues outside of Brookings, who know sort of child development, no brain science, no brain development. And I, as far as I can tell, we do not know, we, the people in child development, do not know what are the things that kids have to do on their own to develop critical thinking. um, agency, key skills, and what could you offload to AI? And to me, that is like, I actually am quite, I like just saying that. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. Like, I'm really nervous. I'm nervous for my kids. I'm nervous for the students of the world because, obviously Gen AI can do so much for us. Um, so if one of the main ways that kids develop critical thinking through education at the moment, pretend, is learning to write an essay with a thesis statement, picking evidence that supports their argument, putting it in logical order. And let's be honest, like what seventh graders produce as essays, it's not a great contribution to humanity. It's not the product of the essay. It's the process that they have to go through, to that logical thinking process, understanding how you parse truth from fiction. It's as basic as that. Like where is data? What is evidence? How do you analyze it for arguments? So there may be another way to develop that critical thinking skill, but in at the moment that's sort of one of the main ways. And until we come up with another way that all kids can do, it makes me very nervous that sort of Gen AI will sort of kind of basically offload critical thinking development to our kids. That's the thing I'm most worried about. And the second thing I'm most worried about is um, I mean, we are at the tip of the iceberg with what this technology can do. And I am sure we're going to have all sorts of incredible things in the next 7 years that we couldn't even, that are like straight up Star Trek, right? With being able to talk to technology. We can already do that. Like, and, robotic, R2D2 type scenarios. And so I do worry about manipulation, and I do worry about socialization, interpersonal socialization, because we see what just a phone, flat screen, text message interaction does, but for kids, sort of ability to interact face to face. So those to me are the three things that I'm most worried about. But the first one is what makes me really worried. Are you guys worried about that? Like, how are you thinking about this?
Oh, I love when you turn it back on us. We're asking all you folks so we could develop a point of view on this. I think the quick answer for me is yes. I am nervous about it, given the current way schooling is designed, that we have not thought about how to mitigate it, which maybe is my chance to turn it back to a question to you, which is part of the premortem is identifying. And so all three of these risks, I think, are big. Manipulation is big. Socialization, we had an entire episode on that question. And what do relationships look like in the future? Forget about schooling for a moment, right? With AI bots. Yeah, right. And so I guess having identified those as three big ones, what should we do to, like you're starting to think about what's the mitigation piece, right? Structurally, assignment wise, how do we think about this so that we don't, we don't live right into those
Yeah.
premortems?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, we haven't gotten there yet in the task force. So this
No,
again,
no, yeah, just
Rebecca,
speculation.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's my, yeah.
Well, but let
Well,
me sharpen the question actually,
yeah,
Rebecca, because you just wrote this big book, right? Or I should say important book, The Disengaged Teen, where you thought a lot about the negative implications, right, of being in passenger mode and sort of the listlessness, which I think could be a byproduct of maybe all three of these, certainly two of the three.
mhm,
And so how have you thought about that?
yeah. Well, I think for me the mitigation piece. I'm going to take your question broadly, Michael. For me, I think we have to. I have like a sort of sequence of types of levels of types of things we have to think about. So, like for me, the biggest thing, and you guys have talked about this on your podcast, is really thinking through and being very clear when we're talking about adult mediated use of particularly Gen AI, less predictive AI, and student mediated or child mediated. And I mean that for right now. Like we're in a massive point of transition. We will eventually come to some new normal event eventually, but in our current sort of transition, the discourse around AI in education is so fuzzy and flimsy and unrigorous. You guys are great because you're surfacing that. And so often we hear, AI can transform education. It would be great. And people reference, and I think, it depends. And when people, certainly from a technologists, discourse, it's true that AI can transform many, many things. It's unbelievable. Like protein folding, incredible. Spotting viruses in wastewater, amazing. Like just rapid breakthroughs that are incredible. And all of those are run by adults who have deep critical thinking and subject matter knowledge and are using the AI as a tool. And that's very, and then the discourse goes, and then we'll just give it to schools and it'll be great and kids can blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, well, give it to schools who? So, like, let's be very clear. Like, is it helping teachers massively teach better? Or is it helping them do the same more efficiently? Diane, you've made this point. Those are two different things, and it's very different from giving just sort of blanketing Gen AI in pedagogy for students to use, given the example of the essay, right? Like it might actually, first of all, kids don't have the content knowledge to understand. So I've spent my whole, 20 years talking about the sort of academic skills plus, and now I'm like, oh my god, let's not forget about the content knowledge. Like, how will kids know how to assess if the sniff test, does this seem right, does
Mhm.
it not seem right?
Actually, can we put a pin on that just for one sec? Because that's interesting. Like you've been pushing us to be like, okay, not knowledge for just its own sake, but to do these skills. And now you're worried we might all sort of blow past it and forget that the knowledge actually is an important base.
Yep.
Am I hearing you right?
A
Okay.
100%. Like I've been absolutely pushing, which you both have too, with the bringing together of knowledge acquisition with knowledge application. And I do think if we do it right, that's to me the sunny possibility with Gen AI. maybe it could bring those two things closer together in a more scalable, systematic education system-wide effort. But I am very worried that people will be like, well, they'll forget about the knowledge acquisition piece. Just like you like, and that is very scary.
Can we stay here for a minute? Because
Yeah.
I keep asking people to think about the system, and no one seems to want to go there with me. You're the first person. So sorry, I can't help myself. I'm so excited that someone wants to actually talk about a system, and especially this space, because I love this space. So you're thinking that there's this process of acquiring knowledge, and like I think we're aligned on this. Great. Knowledge for knowledge's sake is not super useful if you don't have skills. Like, what are you doing with that knowledge? Are you analyzing? Are you making an argument? What the skills you need to bring the so paint me a picture of how AI might help bring those closer together in a learning system, if you will. Do you have any,
Yeah, I mean,
can you imagine that?
I'm not sure I have a clear vision at a classroom level, but I have a clearer vision at system transformation
Okay.
level.
Okay.
That's great. Let's go there. Yeah.
Let's go there.
So one of the things that sort of in system transformation theory, there's the real sort of shifting of the purpose of a system, which is the hardest. This is straight up Donella Meadows' systems transformation theory, which argues, just maybe some of the listeners aren't familiar, that there's different levers to shift systems sustainably. And some of them are shifting how we measure things, shifting how we allocate resources, and those are all important and good. But we tend, broadly, people who shift systems, but certainly in education, to get stuck there, which means let's shift our assessment, which is important. We need to do it. Let's shift how we put money. Da 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 da. And it's much harder to really shift a system that way than if you shift the shared vision and purpose of what a education is for. And so that's a cultural shift, it's a mindset shift. It includes, and underneath that, it includes shifts in power dynamics. So to me, if the way in to me Gen AI provides an opportunity to do some be a lever to shift sort of the purpose of ed. So if ChatGPT and any other Gen AI tool can pass all the exams that we're gatekeeping ed systems for, can do all the most of the assignments, and if it can't do it now, it will. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's going so fast. Yeah, exactly. So then we have to. It will force us. It is forcing us, which is part of the big discussion in this, why we did this Brookings Task Force, to think deeply about what is the purpose of education. So it's a massive freaking logistical enterprise getting all kids in a jurisdiction to a place at the same time of day. Like, it's just, it's incredible what schools do logistically. Like, so what are we, if, we might not, it might be hard to break that up until we have a different world of work, because mainly schools are also doubling as childcare in every single country in the world. It's the largest nationalized, government supported childcare system. So I'm not sure we're going to just kids roving around the world, but if we have something we're doing with kids at certain hours a day, what is the purpose of it? Like, is it to identify a problem in their community and then start working backwards about what needs to fix they need to fix it, and try to learn the stuff, here's content knowledge that they may need that would inform them on how to fix it, and teachers are scaffolding and curating problem solving expeditions, and that's the core thing of what we do. And you sort of learn knowledge, and you're using Gen AI as a dialogue agent. I mean, I think Conmigo is really interesting, and I think it's a useful use case of how to the student, interfacing could be helpful for students. But more, does it free up teachers' ability to teach differently? Because I don't think we will get away from teachers, nor do I think we should get away from teachers, because the human connection piece is so crucial. So to me, it's really we cannot it's the deep thought about what's the purpose of education now. Like, we can't just keep going along assigning the same tests and trying to ban cheating, like, which is a short term, totally understandable emergency response because we don't know what we're doing and we haven't got our hands around this. And boy, I wish, tech companies would have given school districts a heads up, like,
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure that that would have mattered. I must say I do love what you're saying. Years ago, we created this whole experience for educators to go through that was how do you create an aligned school model, sort of an elegant model. And it literally, step one is to determine the purpose of education. So you're speaking my language here, and it's an interesting thought that this could be the lever that sort of forces us to rethink, because the purposes it's serving right now are so obviously met in some other way that we don't have a choice. We have to revisit that. It's a fascinating way to think about how it could drive system change. Um,
just on that, Diane, Jenny and I, in our book, in the Disengaged Teen book, our meta argument around why engagement matters, and really we're focused on, explorer mode. We all need more time in explorer mode, which is agentic engagement, the marriage of agency and engagement. And our sort of big argument is it's really time to move from an age of achievement to an age of agency in education. And we are seeing the age of achievement fraying. We're seeing it in mastery, competency based, college board shifting up its ways of assessing, new AP test versions. We're seeing it fraying, and Gen AI, I think, just accelerated the fraying of the age of achievement, which is all about sort of content acquisition and synthesis and skills within that, and sort of repetition back out.
yeah,
But really following instructions.
yeah. Talk for a moment about the benefit of an age of agency. What does that look like? Why is that a direction we would want to go? And how does maybe AI support it?
Right. I think AI could, I'm not sure I think it could go either way at the moment. I think it really depends on how we use it. But when we talk about an age of agency, the piece that we are really leaning into is all the evidence um, around the marriage of basically agentic engagement, which, Diane Summit, you designed for agentic engagement. So this idea that when kids uh, have agency over their learning, and they have an opportunity to influence the flow of instruction in little or big ways. Summit is on the extreme. That's a total redesign, but you can do it in schools. Educators can do it in their classrooms by giving choice, by asking for feedback, by, before starting a lecture, asking kids, where do you want to start? Do you have any questions about this topic? Like, we're doing the solar system. Where do you want to start? Just that shifts the entire mindset of a learner, right? And much more engaged. So, A, they're more engaged. B, they're developing skills to really be able to independently chart their learning journey, which is what they're absolutely going to need when they leave school. No one will be, spoon feeding them. And we see that in the kids who knock it out of the park in the age of achievement. We found so many kids in our research who were excellent achievers in school and fell apart in college because no one is there, spoon feeding them. And so for us, and the other piece is they're more engaged. They're getting sort of agency over their learning, much better skills, and they're much happier. It's so much more fun to have some autonomy and ownership over your life and to try to be the author of your own life. And those are all the reasons why we think it is really imperative and that Gen AI has accelerated this need. Um, because more than ever now, kids are going to have to navigate this world where you've got Gen AI, you're going to have advanced robotics, you're going to have neurolinks, you're going to have, like, soon we're going to be, I'm sure, interacting with new robotic people. There's a whole it's a wild world that's coming down the pike, and our kids need to lead it rather than be led by it. That's Yeah.
Michael, I feel like I'm hogging all the time. Do you have
Loving
a
it.
last question?
Well, maybe last question before we wrap up, Rebecca, which is, so let's say we have the purpose conversation. We if not nationally, at least in strong pockets of communities, we commit to an age of agency and we start to think about what that is. Where does AI, like, what, you've been impressed by it in certain cases. So where do you see it perhaps? What's the positive case to be made for it in this rethought purpose of schooling with a coherent
Mm,
design?
mm. I mean, I think the thing that I um, am most potentially optimistic about, and I know, Diane, I think you disagree with me, but in the age of agency, I think if we're rethinking the purpose, a huge barrier to that is teacher expertise, practice, prep. And we've got a ton of teachers who've been trained in the age of agency, and it is not their fault. They're teaching their heart out and they're doing their job. And we're very clear in the book that this is not a problem with teachers. They're squished from above with the system and squished from below, frankly, with parents sort of pressuring them. And so, could Gen AI really unlock teacher ability to be experts in a new sort of let's pretend the school is around solving problems. I think we need a huge piece of that solving problems being around citizenship and civic, sort of personal, collective, and community wide problems, right? But I feel like that it could just, if done well, it could really be a massive boost for educators. So it isn't so scary. They're not thrown into a whole new purpose of ed, and entirely new system with different, ways of succeeding without some serious support.
No, that's super helpful. I like the vision in general. I'm taking from this conversation that whereas it's kind of hard to have these national dialogues or dialogues even in communities around purpose, maybe AI is such an abrupt, big shift that it actually brings us to the table to say, what the heck are we doing here? Because every single one of the stakeholders is like, this ain't working. And so let's talk about what are we actually trying to accomplish here. So maybe we'll leave it there, Diane, and shift to the last part. Rebecca, we have this tradition that our readers enjoy. Yep, for better or worse, they keep lists apparently of what Diane and I have read or watched. But we want to hear yours. What do you, what have you, or what are you reading, watching, listening to? Often outside your day job, but it's okay
Yeah.
if it intersects with it.
Well, I don't watch much, I must say, except for Shrinking, which I watched through and through. Loved it, loved it, loved it. That was the best.
Incredible. Yeah.
We agree.
I can't wait for, like, the next season.
Yeah.
But I actually don't watch a lot of stuff, but I do love to read. So I have two things here. One is Unwired, Gaining Control Over Addictive Technologies by Gaia Bernstein. It's awesome. She's a lawyer at Seton Hall, and it's a really good book. And I'm not all the way done. And then the other one is a novel called Dust. by Josh Plassey that just came out. It's like a it's like a new Lord of the Rings.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
Sci-fi.
Wow.
All right.
Fun.
Different
I like
worlds.
that.
Yeah.
I like that too. That's fun. Well, I have one this week. I was telling Michael, he's not the only sort of fan author, fan boy, fan girl this week. I met a woman named Samara Bay, and she has authored a book called Permission to Speak: How to Change What Power Sounds Like, starting with you. She's fascinating, and I got to have coffee with her last week, and we did like a joint book club. We switched books and then got to sit down and talk about them. I know, super, super fun. She's got this incredible journey. She wanted to be an actor. She became a dialect coach. She worked with tons of famous people like Gal Gadot, et cetera, et cetera. And now has turned her passion of helping people to people who are really trying to bring impact to the world and drive impact in the world, and helping them find their voices in public speaking. It's which, here's the inside secret. It's basically figuring out how to get out of your own way is really the secret to it. And so it's a beautifully written book. It's also a super practical guide in many ways, and so highly recommend it. Really enjoying it.
Awesome. Awesome. Diane, I realize like I'm starting to outpace, or sorry, the podcast recordings are outpacing my ability to keep up with the reading and so forth. And like Rebecca, I'm not a huge TV person outside of sports and shrinking. So,
Yes, there we go. Sports and
uh,
shooting. You added sports.
yeah, but so but I'm almost done with a book, Task versus Skills, Squaring the Circle of Work with Artificial Intelligence, by Mark Stephen Ramos. He was the chief learning officer at Cornerstone, is no longer there, but has been starting to do some writing and thinking about how AI changes our learning organizations, or organizations where people need to be upskilling and reskilling. So far it has been interesting, deeply technical, and I've kind of enjoyed it, and I'm not at all getting out of work. So apologies on that, but no apologies for having Rebecca here. This has been
No,
fantastic.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you
you,
so much for
guys.
joining us. And a thank you again to all of you, our listeners. A reminder to check out Rebecca's book with Jenny Anderson, The Disengaged Teen, Helping Kids Learn Better, Feel Better, and Live Better. Check it out, read it, digest it. We'll have more conversations about it, I suspect. And let's all stay curious together. We'll see you next time on Class Disrupted.